Today we're going to be fixing our lower rad mount. Now this is something that I made myself for our particular application. We do have a larger aluminum radiator and we were just sitting too close to the engine where we were rubbing the expansion tank against some of our pulleys. We ended up having some failures there, lost some fluid, impacted one of our races. So we removed all of the stock pieces so we could pull the rad closer to the front of the vehicle, get some more clearance in there, and I can show some more of that once we're in the vehicle. But today we're going to be fixing this guy. Now this guy ended up taking quite a hit when we ended up bumping that curb. I think that this probably saved our rad a little bit, as this was the primary point of impact for the lower jack point. So this kind of took a brunt of the force, and then that kind of, I think, resisted some of the deformation that we had. But looking at this, it seems that we have a primary point of bending here, obviously. But a lot of this seems fairly straight. So what I'm going to do, because I don't have a powerful enough torch to heat it to bend it all back, so I'm actually going to cut these here, reinstall the two halves onto the vehicle loosely, drop the rad back in and kind of align and attach everything in there, and then evaluate if I'm lining up to all of my points. So these guys are going to the side of my rails. This is going to the bottom of the rad. This again goes to the side of my rails. And this again goes to the bottom of the rad. So if I can chop out this middle bit that's done most of the bending, and I can mount these and all of those go together, then I'll just weld in a new bar in here to get it all back to being straight. So we're going to start by cutting these straight, and then when we go to weld the new bar in, we'll actually do more of a Z cut, which typically people will do when they're joining frames together, so that way we're not just butt welding these together. So what I'll do is, once we cut it straight and we lay it all in and it does sit nicely for us, I'll then come back and I'll cut a Z pattern into it, so more of a notch, so that way the bar that I replace it with will sit on top and this bar will sit underneath, and then I'll weld up, across, and then up, and then there. That way it just creates a little bit better of a weld pattern for us. So with that being said, let's get to cutting, and then we'll get to mounting these into the vehicle. Upon further inspection, this part did get a little bit of a wobble to it. This end still looks fairly straight, but this end definitely kinked, which probably means that part of this part did a little bit of this. So what we're going to do is we are going to try heating this up, and we are going to try to bang it flat. Now again, I don't have the right torches to do that, but it's worth giving it a shot and seeing what we can get out of it. So that ended up working out for us. We're a bit more straight in the part. Mind you, is that actually gonna straighten everything up so it aligns? No idea until we give it a shot, but at least it's more straight and we can go from there. So with that, I'm gonna let this guy cool down. I'm gonna take the other side and get that put back in the car. So now up here on the top of the cross member across the front, I've made custom brackets that mount to the top side here, and we'll kind of swing you around and you can see. So there's a bracket tucked in right here, So that way our rad actually attaches here, and then we have a similar one tucked up over here, so that way our rad can attach there. So we'll have our 4 points of attachment. So now we're just gonna take the rad, drop the rad in, see if we can line these holes up. And if we can line all these holes up and there's not a lot of stress as to where they want to be, and we're not really forcing or squeezing things, then we know we're good. If we drop it in, we have to force some holes, then we got to take some stuff out, bend it around a little bit, and then kind of once we've established that it works and we can line everything up, we'll take these parts back out, do that Z cut like I was saying, put it all back together, and then we'll measure, and then we'll take some more bar stock, cut to length so it all fits, and then we'll drop that bar stock in, and then we'll tack it here so we know where it all is, and then we'll take it back to the bench and weld it together. So we seem to have been able to successfully kind of get the rad back in to all of our different mount points. One up here, one down up there, over here, and there. We got to do some massaging as kind of expected. These definitely bent a little bit more than what we could see by the eye, but I was able to get the points to kind of line back up. This guy lined up nicely, tightened up nicely. So we're kind of good on this end. Over here, the only real problem I ran into, it's got a bit of a space here. That could just be between the other rad, this guy being lower or higher. It could just be a matter of just build tolerance of the different parts and their accuracy, but I can just put in some spacers there. Probably get an aluminum little spacer standoff, slide that in there, and then we'll be able to touch that off and it'll be perfectly fine. So that kind of is really the only significant major issue, I could say. So now that we have that, we can take these guys and we can do that Z cut and prepare them to essentially reinstall all of this and then measure out the piece we're gonna have to slide in there. So now that I'm fairly confident we're gonna be able to make it work on the other end and everything's gonna fit with maybe some minor tweaking when we're all done, we're gonna do some of our Z cuts. We're essentially just gonna cut straight down here, across here, and there, so that way we have an alternating weld and we just don't have a single point. And we're just gonna cut it around to avoid all the lightning holes that I had added. So that way we're gonna be welding straight and square onto some steel. Now these guys are all ready to go back onto the car, and we can reassess our fitment, take some measurements, and then make the joiner piece between the two. Okay, now we got the rad back in its position. We got it loosely mounted in the top, which we can just tighten down, but we know that the holes line up and we're good. Got it loosely mounted. The other side of the top, again, it is lining up, so we're good there. We added our little spacer down here, and we're able to button that up so that way that is snug. And then we have our fastener on this side. So now what we need to do is slide underneath, and we need to measure this point to this point, and this point to that point, and then we'll have the size we're gonna need for our center piece.
Okay, so that's 14 7/8.
So the top is 14 7/8. The bottom is 17 1/16. So now it's time to go cut that bar and make that middle piece. Alright, now it's time to take it back under the car, see if it fits. So this guy is then gonna go right in here. We're a little bit snug, so we just gotta take a little bit more off the ends, and then it should slide up and in. But otherwise, it's not looking half bad. Alright, after some more adjustments, we seem to got it fit pretty good. Both sides lining up all right. So now I'm just gonna take this center bar, prepare it, put some bevels into it, clean it up so that way it's nice shiny metal. And then we're going to tack her in where she is. So now with the rad out, I'll be able to just tack these areas again to lock them in. Same with up here, just tack that all in. That way it's all locked in, and then I'll start joining between and I'll clean it all up so it looks nice. And then we're one step closer. have our lower rad support all welded up and ready to test fit again to make sure that everything does line up. If everything lines up at this point, the only thing that then is left is to add some of those lightning holes that I used to have and then paint this sucker, which when it's like negative 20 degrees outside Celsius, it's kind of hard to paint, so I'm gonna have to find somewhere inside the house to do that. Got the rad back in. We got all of our holes to line up. So we got our top rad mount here on this side. We got our top rad mount down here. We got a lower rad mount here. Other lower rad mount here. All of this is now in there tight. So everything is super, super solid. Now, if anybody else out there has had that gapping problem in here, or has ever replaced one of the coolant reservoirs on an E46, you know how tight that gap is. But now when we've pulled that rad forward, we can then just take this and it just drops straight down in there. And then you can actually see how much extra space we have in here, where that is where our concerns were before, where we were touching. But yeah, that's essentially why I went through and created all of those additional rad mounts and changes to them. Yeah, it probably could be refined a little bit better. Probably could be a more robust design, but that's what we got. That's what we're gonna go with. So now all that's left is our lightning holes and paint. So as far as this is concerned, that bit is repaired.